Guys, I need to take a break from everything to talk about FZero 99, a game whose reveal made my eyes roll, and that some might even call FZero's Federation Force moment, because in spite of my initial hesitation to accept this as the title fans have been waiting 20 years for, it may have just become my favorite FZero game. Yeah, I can't believe I'm saying that either, but truthfully, this game has only become more and more difficult to put down after each and every play session. And for the first time in years, FZero has been constantly buzzing in my mind. For the time being, FZero 99 now occupies the top slot of my preferred comfort game, if you can even call it that, because I'm eager to jump back into it for as little as just a few minutes whenever I can. I know this feeling won't last forever, but that's exactly why I need to talk about it now, because while this might not be the FZero game many fans were hoping for, it deserves to be praised for its top-to-bottom focus on executing a single genius idea. I've been critical of the Switch generation on this channel before, and while the past year has certainly given me several opportunities to rethink my stance, I'm here to argue that FZero 99 is exactly the type of game I've been asking for without even realizing it. This game is colored with the shades of a Nintendo I missed, and one I desperately need more of moving forward. Let me explain. In order to assess the impact of this game, I think we need to start at its reveal, because there's really no better way to describe the initial reception than mixed at best. With pre-release leaks already warping expectations, everything about this announcement, from the presentation of the trailer to the wider circumstances surrounding its dormant series, presented a recipe for disaster that can be felt in just about anyone's reaction. I know many fans' hearts stopped the moment the camera zoomed in on the Blue Falcon, because mine did too. But after revealing a 99-player Battle Royale racer in the Super Nintendo art style instead of a big budget new entry or even a remaster, what followed wasn't unquestionable hype or relief, but a bit of bewilderment. Something about this didn't feel right, but it didn't have anything to do with what is most important, the quality and value proposition of the game. It's because we've been here before. Not terribly long ago, there was an entire era of Nintendo negatively defined by an unfortunate frequency of poor first impressions. And having gone through it, no amount of my own satisfaction with that generation can erase the most common sentiment of the time. Nintendo was out of touch. Games ranging from poor to great quality were all equally reviled, and gamers were pissed. But after diving into just one of those horrifically condemned games for myself as recently as this year and discovering a really enjoyable experience, I learned an important lesson in judging a book by its cover. This is a very different time for Nintendo, making any such comparison to the dark periods of Metroid, Animal Crossing, and even Pikmin dramatically overblown. I wasn't about to make the same mistake now as I did back then, but really, there wasn't any reason to do so, because unlike a fully scoped, fully priced, radically different spin-off entry like what came before it, FZero 99 is basically free and is nothing short of an ideal, high-octane F-Zero-ass racing game. True in form, true in speed, and true in ideas. Come on. Come on. This is it? This is it. 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 Yes! I'll be the first to admit, I do have a soft spot for the original FZero. It's a game I definitely didn't grow up with, but have always highly respected for ushering in the Super Nintendo era with its pseudo 3D art style, brimming with speed, and wonderful sprite detail. However, returning to the original does trade the tighter, high-risk, high-reward gameplay for a more stripped-back, classic experience that can often feel a bit slippery and unintuitive. This isn't the case in FZero 99, because while it is a SNES reimagining in style and track design, the core racing experience has been heavily updated with more modern design choices. In SNES Zero, there certainly was some risk tied to boosting, but nothing like the following games that tied boosting and the player's health to a single resource. There was also the possibility of crashing out, but rarely at the cost of the player's choice to make a risky play. Without a spin attack and only 3 other racers posing a significant threat, aggression was discouraged in favor of precise, flawless execution. In a sense, FZero didn't establish its breakneck speed and uniquely aggressive death race identity until the later entries. And I think that's what led me to feel concerned heading into FZero 99. It's true, this game isn't quite as relentless as GX, but there is a real sense of risk and reward. The essence of FZero is captured wonderfully when you eke out a finish just as your machine begins powering down after pushing it to the absolute limit, or when your unbridled aggression is rewarded for refilling your energy and increasing its maximum capacity after brutally KOing an opponent. The best part? That was a real person you just murdered. In a video game, of course. It's amusing to think that after all these years of being told FZero would only return with a bold new idea, said idea ended up being a fairly reasonable extension of what players had been asking for decades. Online multiplayer really does elevate not just the application of its foundational mechanics, but the feeling and intensity of being in an FZero race. But this is something different. Beginning with Tetris in 2019, and later Pac-Man and even Super Mario Bros., the 99-player Battle Royale format was something I viewed as a cute gimmick that failed to really capture my interest. I felt similarly upon first considering the FZero edition of this idea, because I was concerned 99 players on Nintendo's network would make for a disastrous online experience, trading skill expression for a mess of desync and chaos. But after diving in for myself, I've come away believing the 99 format was made for FZero, as it immediately elevates aspects of even the original game I was surprised to discover. You really feel the different strengths and weaknesses of each machine, and by focusing strictly on the original 4, as an opponent, you always have an idea of what you're up against. The Blue Falcon remains a solid all-around vehicle, the ideal beginner's choice. But I think the remaining 3 offer highly unique playstyles that are further amplified in the Battle Royale format. I can imagine the Fire Stingray being chosen by players who are patient and meticulous in their driving style. What you trade strong acceleration and energy regeneration for is the highest top speed and best cornering in the game. But don't ask me how I got a win on it, as I tend to be disrupted by other racers a bit too often while using it. The Golden Fox might be the vehicle with both the highest risk and skill ceiling. It's pretty slippery, which can be mitigated with its incredible acceleration, as well as leaning and releasing the throttle. But in order to extract its maximum value, you must be utilizing boost on a constant, perfectly executed rotation. As such, the Golden Fox may be the meta, but only in the hands of the most highly skilled and practiced. Be otherwise prepared to crash out often. That just leaves the Wild Goose, which is neither the fastest nor the best at acceleration or cornering. On almost every individual metric, it is statistically outclassed by another machine. But this game breathes new life into it in a way that was practically non-existent in the Super Nintendo release. The Wild Goose is an expert at brawling. Not only can it withstand the most amount of damage from opposing vehicles and hazards, it's able to remain firmly in its position and bully others who get in its way. What's so significant is the fact that so much depth from the original game emerges with just a few modern refinements and an influx of skilled players pushing what everyone is capable of. The Goose is most comfortable in the middle of the pack until the end of the race, maintaining control and muscling out other racers until an opportunity strikes, which is my preferred playstyle that becomes increasingly viable when considering the excellent implementation of unique comeback mechanics in FZero 99. Okay, we gotta make some magic happen here. Oh! Slim Bowser, my friend, you have made a critical error! Comeback mechanics are interesting to talk about, because what often comes up is the negative implication of rubber banding AI or having to accept the random inevitability of Mario Kart's blue shell. But what I think makes this game exceptional and true to the essence of FZero is how its comeback methods are helped by a little bit of luck while rewarding a whole lot of skill. No matter where you are in the pack, you're faced with a unique challenge. Obviously, if you find yourself in the back for too long, you'll rank out. But the relationship between the players in the front and middle of the pack is where things get really interesting. Because at the front of every race is an endlessly spawning assortment of explosive bumpers that require an additional level of mastery to maneuver around without taking a suboptimal line or even blowing yourself up. Now, should the fixed placement of these bumpers be memorized by top players, that would make winning pretty unattainable for the rest of us. But that's where the Skyway comes in. As you're brawling it out in the middle ranks, super sparks are generated from every point of contact and even en masse from these special golden bumpers. And after collecting enough of these to fill the gauge, players can hop onto the Skyway for both a relief from the brawl and to gain a massive boost in speed and positioning. In all honesty, my initial impression of the Skyway was that it would be a gimmicky, thoughtless gap closer, kinda like the blue shell. But that's very much not the case here. Entering the Skyway is tactical, as every course has its own optimal entry points, while holding on to a full gauge for too long disables your ability to utilize a natural boost. When you're in first place, no matter how perfect your driving is, players on the Skyway are always a threat, as you have no way of generating your own super sparks. The Skyway is really the mechanic that holds this entire experience together, because it pressures leaders to make exceedingly riskier decisions while giving everyone behind them a fighting chance and motivation to interact aggressively. Past FZero games featured a large quantity of aggressive CPU racers to compete with, but it was nothing like this. By ensuring every player has a reason to fight and a real chance of losing no matter their skill level, every win continues to feel both attainable and highly valuable. And I think striking that balance is essential for every Battle Royale game to maintain a consistent level of engagement. I think back to my nearly 400-hour endeavor with PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and how after finally achieving the skill to secure a decent amount of wins on my own, I lost interest in the loop of looting and playing passively to win in favor of dropping into quick gunfights before burning out on the game entirely. FZero 99 is so unlike that. It's so focused. Everything both new and old is working harmoniously, and it takes several measures to ensure players continue to come back. It's funny to think this is technically a live service game meant to drive and maintain Nintendo Switch Online subscriptions, because thus far, it suffers none of the pitfalls associated with the model. Instead, the experience outside of the race is purely designed to maintain a healthy player population for as long as realistically possible. The simple reality is that games like this will not sustain a large active player base for very long without some form of progression. Cosmetic customization is a great way to maintain player retention, and I think Nintendo's approach to this is a large indication of how they're treating this experiment. Any other company would have gated premium skins behind microtransactions, but in FZero 99, every unlockable is based on player achievement. When you see the handful of players in a lobby with a black machine only unlocked through winning a race, it places even more value on securing that first win, the win that gets you hooked. I'm not typically the type of player to care even slightly about cosmetics in competitive multiplayer games. Seriously, I'm usually rocking default skins, but this game unlocked that desire within me, encouraging me to play for longer and with a larger variety of playstyles to gather as many different variations of each of the different machines as I could. I've also seen some criticism regarding the timed rotation and limited amount of modes I honestly could not disagree more with. In fact, after falling off the original Splatoon hard due to its hourly map rotation, I think FZero 99's approach is nothing short of genius and natural. By simplifying the amount of modes available at once, queue times are practically non-existent and will stay that way for as long as the game remains active. With a handful of twists on the core 99 mode in constant rotation, rewarding tickets to enter the most notable and rarely active Grand Prix, there's always a reason to stick around and keep playing. Winning the Grand Prix is what I imagine will be the end goal for more dedicated players, and it is tough to seize the opportunity and perform consistently enough to win on a 5-map gauntlet. But this is exactly what FZero is about. It's hard enough to even survive 5 sequential races, let alone place high enough to secure the elusive Grand Prix W. And to think that this is only the beginning, with even more challenging courses on the way. Seriously, you guys are not ready for some of these tracks. I think the value proposition this game provides is undeniably exceptional, which is why I believe anyone even remotely interested in this IP needs to give it a shot. FZero is definitely not for everyone, which is likely reflected in the series' declining interest leading up to its slump into dormancy, while a series like Mario Kart has ballooned into a mega franchise, almost cannibalizing some of FZero's unique elements. Seriously, before this game's release, the cult-like desire for more FZero had become such a meme that the most common sentiment within the wider Nintendo community more closely resembled learning to be okay without FZero than continuing to ask when a new installment would be considered. However, I think that's about to change in a big way, because rather than gauging interest in future entries with a fully priced remaster of GX, Nintendo has instead chosen to build interest by drastically lowering the barrier to entry of one of their most long and forgotten core franchises. They're allowing a brand new generation of Nintendo fans to discover the intensity and unique appeal of FZero, training them up for whatever may appear in the future. And as it stands, the only thing it really needs is a group function so friends can play together for longer. In that respect, I think this game might be the best thing that could ever happen to the franchise, which makes it kind of a shame it was initially misjudged for taking this perceived step back to the style and design pioneered by the Super Nintendo. And that is super important to me, because I want this game to spearhead a larger conversation regarding Nintendo IP and experimentation. FZero 99 was developed by Nintendo Software Technology, a Nintendo subsidiary with an interesting history based in America. Their output has historically been a bit mixed, most recently providing development support for the Switch ports of Captain Toad Treasure Tracker and Super Mario 3D World. But their long partnership with the DigiPen Institute of Technology, leading NST to hire many of their graduates, gives them a uniquely Western slant. I think this is reflected in the design choices facilitating consistent engagement. In the curious model of monetization this game exhibits that feels fairly unique for Nintendo. Now, I can't speak for the Japanese market, but I can tell you that in the West, people want more of these types of games. Modernized revivals of classic, focused design choices are becoming increasingly popular, with breakout indie hits establishing cult followings. Hell, one of my most anticipated independent projects right now is Aero GPX, a brand new anti-gravity racer that is looking to recapture the flavor of FZero while pushing the genre even further in its own way. Many gamers are beginning to grow tired of overscoped and underdeveloped games that not only demand an exceptional amount of time to dig into and complete, but also nickel and dime you every step of the way to support their gluttonous budgets and ballooning development cycles. For the most part, Nintendo has managed to steer clear of many of the more parasitic trends consumers are growing tired of in the West, and their platform is a haven for developers crafting games like Aero GPX. But that doesn't mean they aren't indulging in some of their own problems. When Nintendo is thriving, their games are expensive. For as long as they've been in the video game business, they've been shipping great games in low quantities to keep their market value high. Even as recently as the Wii, the choice to make Wii Sports a pack-in title was something Nintendo of America had to fight tooth and nail for. However, for a long time, I think Nintendo's dedicated handheld market was the place to find some really interesting games at a more flexible price point. This is definitely still the case on the Switch. In fact, Nintendo is reviving a few pretty obscure and highly unique franchises of their own that I could definitely be paying more attention to. But I believe this is the game that has prompted me to be more aware because, as weird as it sounds, FZero is an iconic property in spite of its game's relative lack of popularity. As the 3DS was phased out, much of Nintendo's IP that felt synonymous with their handheld systems had to make the jump to the Switch at a higher price point. And for some of them, the transition wasn't quite as smooth as fans hoped it would be. Rather than forcing a project to increase its scope or require post-release updates to match the value of its fully priced mega franchises, I want to see a future for Nintendo with more of this. If Sega was able to find such success with Sonic Mania, along with Riot Games licensing out their IP to a wide swath of partners to a consistent level of quality with a low cost, who's to say Nintendo can't go even further, designating smaller teams to projects of a similar style and scope, especially for coveted franchises that have struggled to maintain consistency. Hell, just give NST or Q Games the green light to make a new entry of the original Star Fox in its classic art style, modernized in 60 FPS widescreen, featuring new levels and returning series mechanics. I seriously cannot advocate any harder for such an idea. I don't know. Maybe as a certified pixel art enjoyer, I'm just glazing over a wonderfully preserved 3D reimagining of a classic Nintendo art style. But that's why I need to talk about this, because FZero 99 could be the first step in a long time towards redefining Nintendo's approach to smaller scale projects. And I want to know what others think. While the nature of always online battle royale games dictates this game will eventually be shut down, the honeymoon period will end sooner or later. I believe there's so much potential here, and I hope the developers at NST are listening, and that this win gives them the freedom to work on further adaptations or even more unique projects with the trappings of everything I've described. But even if that isn't the case, it's almost comical to think that after literal decades of steadily declining hope, FZero is back right now in a flash and in perhaps a bigger way than I think many of us realize. There is a world for both Mario Kart and FZero after all. In many respects, FZero 99 is absolutely the Nintendo I missed, and they have more than enough power to continue carving out an ideal future moving forward. Okay, certainly this is it. This has gotta be it. Come on, this has gotta be it. Please. Yes! Oh, it's over. It's finally over. Yes. Thanks so much for watching, and thank you to my patrons for funding videos like this, including my top tier supporters, Julian Messmer, Questing Refuge, and Blacktooth Bob. If you'd like to support me and see more videos like this, please consider checking out my Patreon page in the link below. And if not, consider subscribing and liking the video for more Nintendo coverage in the future. In the meantime, maybe I'll be dusting yo ass on Deathwind, baby! Ha ha!